Tonight, Top Gear invades Doncaster, where I go pram racing at the home of the St Leger. Steve Berry meets some Morris men. And at a sensibly safe distance, Tiffany Dell tests the pulling power of Porsche. On a day like today, there's nothing quite so stupid as sitting in your hard-top car, gently marinating in your own sweat. However, even though days like today are few and far between, convertibles just keep on coming. And what we have here are 6 more which are now going to try and take on that most difficult of things, the British summer.
I see you in the darkness, I see you in light. I see your eyes shining in through the night. Make me feel like I belong.
The appeal is obvious, really, when you think about it. Driving a convertible, top down, even in the middle of a hopeless British summer, really does bring a ray of sunshine to a rainy day. I mean, take this Fiat Punto. Costs £13,000, it's in Insurance Group 9, does 36 miles to the gallon, has 4 seats and a usable boot. It's a sensible little car. But if you crank the radio up, get the roof down and bury your foot in the carpet, it becomes a 106-mile-an-hour roller coaster.
You touch me in the dark.
But maybe you're a bit of a traditionalist at heart, in which case I'm sure you'll be more tempted by this, the car that started it all, the Volkswagen Cabrio. This is the latest version, which, like the Punto, costs £13,000. But there's no central locking, there's no electric hood facility, there's no electric windows. I'm amazed it doesn't come with a starting handle. There are better equipped and faster models which can rattle along at 120 miles an hour. No, rattle is the wrong word. The one thing the Volkswagen Cabrio does not do is rattle. Of all the cars of this ilk, it feels the most together and the slowest. If you don't fancy being left at the lights by a silver cross, there's now a new and massively improved version of the ragtop Escort. In the days when this was called the XR3i, it was pretty horrid. But it now has a 16-valve engine, a £16,000 price tag, and it's really rather good. But don't think Ford has forgotten its old customer base. You now get white dials to match your socks. Which is why my favourite of all the small contenders is this. It's the Peugeot 306 convertible, which has a Mercedes-style powered hood. No rollover bar either, so when the canvas is stowed in its neat little cubbyhole back there, the car adopts a low, sleek, slithery profile. The trouble is, there's a price to pay for this glorious Pininfarina styling. This car costs £18,000, and that, no matter how you look at it, is a lot. In Peugeot's defence, you get a 2-litre engine, an ability to do 120 miles an hour, anti-lock brakes and every conceivable toy. That hood isn't the only thing that moves about electrically. You also get quite the most stupid piece of wood I've ever seen in any car ever before. But you tend to forget about that, and the slight lack of rigidity, and even the price, the first time you go round a corner. All Peugeots handle better than all their competitors, and this is no exception. It feels like a sports car, it looks like a sports car, and when you bear that in mind, 18 grand seems okay. But what if £18,000 is the sort of money you lose down the back of the sofa? What are your choices? Well, 2 of the most recent entries come from Saab and Toyota. You get a choice of engines in the Saab and therefore a choice of prices. This is the cheapest with a 2-litre engine and a tag of just under £21,000. That's not bad value when you remember that this is a big, prestigious car which, even in cheapo mode like this, has leather, an electric hood, a great stereo, and even a little light on the dashboard which is currently telling me that the airbag is either not working or about to go off of its own accord. But even though I'm likely to be punched in the face any minute, I do like this car. It should be able to give the BMW 3 Series convertible a run for its money, even if it can't quite match the style of the Diana-mobile Audi. I also like this Toyota, but then that's hardly surprising. I do tend to have a soft spot for £28,000 convertibles that can nudge 140.
I see you in the darkness, I see you in light.
I must confess that I was expecting this car to be a bit of a barge. But it just isn't. It corners with the tenacity of a terrier. It bounces. It's loud. It's alive. You might even call it a bit rough and ready. There is, however, nothing that's even remotely rough and ready about its hood. Like all the cars here, it fits beautifully. There are no drafts and no leaks. In this sector of the market, you should expect a heated glass rear window, which Volkswagen does give you, and electric operation, which they don't. What I'm trying to say here is this. All these cars can, when the need arises, be as weatherproof as their hardtop alternatives. So, which one of these 6 cars would I buy? Well, the Fiat's got lots of character, the Ford's much improved, the Peugeot is lovely. But the answer is none of them. You see, the trouble is that all these cars were originally designed to be either coupes or convertibles, and that means the front and the back were supposed to be joined by 2 pieces of metal, the floor and the roof. Now, if you take the roof away, you either have to add a ton of underfloor strengthening, which makes the car feel wooden, or you let it flop around like one of Bugs Bunny's ears, which makes it feel absolutely horrible. The solution is to buy a car that was designed from day one as a soft top. And in the next few months, you are going to be bombarded with a torrent of proper, purpose-built convertibles. For a kick-off, there's the new MG. Why buy one of these halfway houses when the real thing is just around the corner? Funny, isn't it? The environmentalists and the politicians have done their best to take the fun out of motoring. But now, the car manufacturers are about to put it back.
Sunshine on a rainy day. Sunshine makes my soul Sunshine on a rainy day. Sunshine makes my
Less than 100 years ago, the traditional way to get round the countryside was in a horse and cart. And in fact, as late as 1903, there were hardly any tarmacked roads. Back then, horsepower really did mean 4 hooves and a tail, and all they left behind was a little something for the garden. Nowadays, the horse has been overtaken by the car, and the modern way to get round the countryside involves 4-wheel drive, 2 litres and a rather different sort of emission. But there are still some 5,000 miles of untarmacked highways which are legally open to any vehicle. And since the 1940s, the law has made no distinction between a horse and cart and any so-called motorised carriage, including the 4x4, and thereby hangs a tail. The last few years has seen a massive growth in the sale of off-roaders built especially to take on country lanes. Seen by some as an ideal way to get away from it all, to others, they're nothing less than hell on wheels.
The countryside is under siege, and it makes for an enormous danger for walkers, for riders, for pedal cyclists. And how would you like to be going along a lane when suddenly you see a convoy of off-roaders?
In 1981, the government asked councils to decide exactly who could use green lanes in their area. 2 weeks ago, Andrew Dunlop took his council to the High Court over their decision on a lane in his village.
It started when we first moved here, and it was just a quiet bridleway we were living next to. Then the county council tried to turn this into a byway. And when they publicised it, we were inundated with motorcycles and Land Rovers and even an armoured personnel carrier.
Andrew Dunlop says it will be months, if not years, before the damage can be made good.
These lanes were designed for use by horses and carts, which would come up once or twice a year. The Land Rovers are coming every weekend, they're coming at night, and they're coming mainly when it's wet, and they're destroying it.
So what's to be done? Well, a new pressure group has sprung up which thinks it's got the answer.
We would like to see new legislation brought forward which will prohibit the use of motorised vehicles on unsurfaced green lanes, except for access to premises or land, unless the responsible highway authority have made a specific order which permits such use.
But should 4x4 users be limited to special sections in the countryside?
I'm driving this truck on a mountain road. I got a hot rod rig.
Well, off-roaders say not, and argue that they're much maligned and wrongly accused on all counts, particularly that they're taking over the countryside in vast numbers.
There usually isn't any problem with masses of vehicles. Anybody who drives lanes generally is associated with a club or an association or a motoring organisation, and there are codes of conduct. And one of those particular codes of conduct is that if you are going out, you should be in a small convoy of vehicles, which would be perhaps 2 or 3 vehicles.
So could the problem be just a few rotten apples? Berkshire County Council believe it is, but they're paying the price.
Since the wet winter of 92-3, the county councils had to spend a large sum of money in repairing damage caused by vehicular use of its more vulnerable byways.
So what's the countryside for? To gaze at from your mini metro or to explore with your 4x4?
We make it a family day out, and we make it we start about 10 o'clock in the morning. We have our picnic in the byway. When we're actually clearing the byways, we don't drive them, especially, and we do that in the winter months as well.
Not only do they claim ecological credentials, but they also point to the small number of byways open to them.
Only 5% of public rights of way are actually open as byways to vehicular users, and 95% of the rest of the rights of way in the UK are open to walkers and cyclists and those who choose to ride on horseback.
We want the countryside to be open as possible, but if there's a small minority who wrecks it for everybody else, then I'm afraid the law will have to be changed.
That possibility is a long way off yet, but what is clear is that 4x4 enthusiasts feel misunderstood and even let down by a small minority. Their question is, isn't the countryside big enough for all of us?
Last week I asked you to identify this classic British sports car. It is, of course, the beloved Frog Eye Sprite. And here's this week's winners. You'll be able to see the Sprite plus hundreds of other classic cars both on display at the club stands, for sale with the dealers, and at the Sotheby's auction at the Top Gear Classic and Sports Car Show at the Birmingham NEC between the 6th and 8th of May. So if you'd like a couple of tickets to the show, plus first-class hotel accommodation courtesy of Top Gear, all you got to do is guess the identity of this week's mystery car. So if you think you know the identity of this week's classic saloon car, just phone 0891 1144 88. That number will be repeated at the end of the show. Good luck.
Back in the 80s, the buzzword was supercar. Ferrari, Jaguar and Lamborghini were all producing them, and limited editions like the F40 were providing big profits for those lucky enough to have their orders accepted. This is Porsche's supercar, the 959, a sort of 911 on steroids. It was offered to a select band of faithful Porsche buyers for £150,000 back in 1986, and they doubled their money the day the car was delivered. Only just over 200 of the 959s were built, but they weren't made just to please the fortunate few. The prime reason was to homologate the cars for racing and rallying. It was the ultimate Porsche, bristling with innovations. Twin turbos forced 450 horsepower out of the 2.85-litre engine. 0 to 60 took just 4 seconds, and the top speed was just under 200 miles an hour. There was a 6-speed gearbox, ABS and 4-wheel drive that had a computer-controlled torque split to suit varying conditions. Supercar meant super fast, and no production Porsche could get anywhere near the 959. But now, the new 911 Turbo does just that. For the first time, it's 4-wheel drive. For the first time, the 3.6-litre engine has twin turbos that give it 408 horsepower, 0 to 60 in just over 4 seconds, and a top speed of 180 miles an hour. As with the 959, there's a 6-speed gearbox and ABS, while the 911 has something the 959 hasn't, ABD traction control. The 4-wheel drive torque split is now controlled by viscous differentials, but otherwise there is little to choose between the cars in terms of performance. In fact, while the 959 just wins the 0 to 60 and top speed contests, this new turbo has 8% more torque, making it a much more drivable car in everyday conditions. Clad with the new 911 look that arrived at the end of 1993, the Turbo is certainly much more elegant than its supercar brother. And at £92,000, it's a fair bit cheaper than the £250,000 plus that the 959s are currently valued at. Not only does it have the same smooth shape as the new Carreras, but it's got the same revised and much improved suspension. And, of course, being a turbo, it has to have a big wing. Now, this 959 is privately owned, and I'm not allowed to even scuff the rubber on its tyres. But with this 911 having all this 4-wheel drive technology added and its ABD traction gizmo, someone's got to put it to the test. The handling course. Feel that power coming. And the delivery of the power is just so smooth. There is no real sudden burst of boost, and that really is what is so impressive about this latest 911 twin turbo. Now, handling is so sure-footed over this crest in second gear, rev limiter third, back to second, but there's never any sudden change of understeer to oversteer. It's just mild understeer, very controllable, no nervous twitches as you come off and on the power, the weight transfer, it can handle that. And look at this change of direction at nearly 80 miles an hour with just no drama. Now, not only is this Porsche immensely powerful with that acceleration from 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds, but it's also got the most amazing brakes. So amazing that you can go from 0 to 60 and back to 0 in just over 7 seconds. Unbelievable. Spoilt with the luxury of the Millbrook Proving Grounds one-way road system and no speed limits, I could have thrashed around all day long, revelling in those amazing brakes, the poised, well-balanced handling, and the never-ending acceleration. The cornering ability is phenomenal. It's just grip, grip, grip. Even in everyday normal life, the turbo provides driver satisfaction. Although you have to be prepared to feel every bump in the road through those ultra-low profile tyres. When you want to overtake, you can do it quickly and therefore safely. No lag, no sudden whoosh of power, just instant acceleration that's all part of a package that makes the 911 Turbo one of the most impressive production cars on the road today. True, the dashboard is the same as it's been for nearly 30 years, and it's still got Volkswagen pedals, but then it wouldn't be a 911 without them. To be honest, I'd hate to have £100,000 to spend on a car, because then I'd have to choose between this turbo and Ferrari's gorgeous 355. This Porsche probably is the better car for everyday use, and there is some room in the back for the kids. So the final choice would probably depend on whether you wanted to be practical or passionate. But does all this mean the new 911 Turbo deserves a supercar tag? Well, it virtually matches the 959 for performance. And with the order books already full till next year, maybe it's almost as exclusive.
Bad to the bone, bad to the bone, bad to the bone.
Now, you're thinking, where could the connection possibly lie between an ancient paganistic ritual and a slab of 1950s Americana?
It's here, the Doncaster Custom Show, an annual celebration of individuality and eccentricity that is determinedly British. Now, some people on the programme may have failed French O-level through staring out of the window, dreaming about cars like that. But the drawings on the back of my Jota always look much more like this. More than anything, I wanted a hot rod, and there are loads of them here.
I find what this world is searching for. Yeah, right here, my dear. I don't have to look.
Like Morris Dancing, custom cars are stuck in a time warp. The style was set in the 70s, when people first got nostalgic about the 50s. They've never changed, and they never will.
I'm never gonna give you up. I'm never ever gonna stop the way I feel about you. Girl, I just can't live without you. I'm never.
The inspiration may be American, but by necessity, many British rods are based on modest little motors that came out of Coventry or Dagenham.
It's a 1953 Ford Anglia. It's got independent front suspension all round, MGB at the front and Jaguar at the back. It's got a 5-speed gearbox, tinted windows and the resprays Ford Rosso red.
So you built it yourself, did you?
Yeah.
And how long did it take?
3.5 years all in. It's been box section for strength, to take the gearbox and the Rover 3.5 litre engine.
It seems to be the classic British hot rod engine.
It is, yeah.
V8, isn't it?
That's right.
Why is that?
I think it's a smaller version of a Buick engine that was originally built in the States. It's got the sound, the V8 sound. That's the key to it, I think.
Tracy, what do you think of all this? Do you like the car?
Yeah, sometimes I've got to drive in it, like, when he's in a good mood, like, and he lets me. But it's a case of having to be into it, otherwise I don't see him.
Like the upright Anglia, the old Ford Pop has always been a great favourite amongst the custom car cognoscenti, probably because it looks so much like an American car that shrank in the wash.
A lot of the credit of the car must go to a kid that's in our club called Dave Weed. He painted it, put the wings and basically made it look like it looks. When I bought it, I undertook to box the chassis and strengthen the chassis, change it into an automatic, basically made it a usable car for me and my family.
Why do you think the Ford Popular is such a popular base for a custom car?
They're just a beautiful looking car. I think as far as hot rodding goes, they make one of the nicest rods for this country. And I've just always had a thing for Ford Populars.
At just £800 on the road, this is the cheapest car in the show. It's a Ford, mainly, though most British car manufacturers feature somewhere. But can you really claim to be lost in the 50s when you missed out on most of the 70s?
Nah, just the actual feel of driving something that everybody looks at and think, what's that? Whose is that? What the bloody hell is it?
You've got quite a lot of work to do on it, haven't you?
Well, yeah, but I'm unemployed. I'm doing it on a budget. So this is how far I've got in 6 months. I've got it on road, it's taxed, tested, it's insured, it's legally on road. And I just want to drive it.
Inevitably, American rods came on the scene. Trouble is, you don't see too many Mint Model B Fords in the Rotherham Advertiser, so most people may do with something similar in glass fibre.
It's a 1933 Ford Roadster replica, built on a sort of a circuit racer style rather than drag racing. Runs a Rover V8 with a 5-speed manual gearbox, sort of race car type suspension, inboard shock absorbers, that sort of thing. Took about 11 months to initially build the car.
And did you build it yourself?
Yes, we built it between us, brother and I.
Who owns it?
I own it.
You own it. Who built it?
Both of us.
Both of you. And if I wanted to buy that car, how much would you want for it?
Well, I think with the market the way it is, it's basically whatever you can get for them. But I'd take 15,000 for it.
But 15 grand wouldn't buy the wheel nuts on my favourite car in the whole wide world.
Well, this is my all-time dream car. It's a succession of like 4 or 5 cars that I've built over the years, and it ended up in the Mojave Desert back in 1986, where I commissioned a guy to look specifically for a Willis 41 body for me, and they're rarer than hen's teeth, I can tell you.
It's like the holy grail of hot rodding, isn't it? The 41 right. Willis Coupe.
That's right.
But it wasn't like this when you found it in the desert, was it?
That's right. No, this car was been bought by somebody just for the trim on the car and all the hardware. So I bought it as a donor vehicle that someone had used to build another car. And it went on from there. It was another 7 years from then to the finish of the project.
7 years, and how much money, if you don't mind me asking?
A lot of money. Probably a nice detached house in Bromley.
So what about that thing? Popping up.
The blown Hemi. Well, right, that was an engine they used to put in these steel Willises back in the 60s. They used to put the old 57 Hemi engines in them, which was the first generation Hemi engine.
Now, John, stating what is utterly obvious, this is going to be a very fast car, but exactly how fast is it?
Well, this car is set up for street and strip, which means we can use it on the street in a legal fashion. So we've had to compromise somewhere along the line with the tune-up in the car, but we've already run a 10-second quarter with no nitrous at 125 mile an hour. So,
which is why you need this?
Yep, we certainly do. Additional parachute for additional braking.
And you even got a pink parachute.
That's right, and it matches the interior and the rest of the theme on the whole car, yeah, that's right.
When it comes to ancient traditions, I guess I'm more your Doncaster Custom Show kind of guy. As for Morris dancing, well, the silly hats and the bells on the trousers and the skipping about, it's all a bit girly. Sorry guys, did I say girly? What I meant to say was attractive, manly, yes, very manly.
Next week, the Eastern Bloc's least successful export, the dubious romance of the Tatra. Buying a used car, Quentin on how not to get conned. And a concept car from the people who brought you the Hillman Avenger.